Now on My Explainer tonight, we focus on the locust invasion in the country, even as government and other NGOs continue to battle this invasion. So we'll start by debunking a few myths and first of all, understanding particularly what we are speaking about. This particular desert locust that is involved in this invasion, this is its scientific name. It's called the desert locust. It's the Schistosacca gregaria. Okay, so that's its scientific name. And at this point, I think it would be important to debunk a few myths. So I know we make this joke that, if these things flew to Luya land, all that would be needed is ugali and it would be solved. Actually, not true. There's a difference between the desert locust and the grasshoppers. So for one, they behave differently, right? So the desert locusts are able to change their behavior and their habits very fast. They migrate over long distances and they have big hind legs, and they're different from the grasshoppers that are eaten by communities in Western Kenya, what they call tsiswenene or nsenene across the border in Uganda. Luyas will not solve this problem. But that's on a lighter note. But here's the other thing that is important to note about these desert locusts. So they don't typically attack humans or animals. And they also are not known to spread any diseases, all right? But they do quite some damage when you take a look at that. Now, we'll get to these counties in a moment, but first I'd like to tell you how they got into the country in the first place. Their migration began on the 28th of December 2019, and as you can see from my map here, they came down into the country from Ethiopia and Somalia. So of course you can imagine, and that's why you've seen the concentration in the northern area counties. 28th of December, by the time they were getting down to Machakos and Embu, that was on the 27th of January, reaching areas close to Baringo around the 20th of January. And according to the latest report by FAO, that's the Food and Agriculture Organization, that's as of last week, Friday, they are now in Kiambere area of Embu County. All right, so this is the migration map that they used to come in here. Now, if you take a look at just some of those counties we were talking about, they're now in 11 counties. That's Mandera, Wajir, Marsabit, Garissa, Isiolo, Meru, Samburu, Baringo, Kitui, and what we've just been talking about, Embu, as well as Laikipia. And again, that map just showing you how they came in. So these are the counties that are ravaged by them. But just what amount of destruction are they able to cause? Now, this is it. This is some staggering statistics, and we got this from the Food and Agriculture Organization. Now, in a span of about 1 square kilometer, it would have about 40 million locusts. Now, each locust weighs about 2 grams. These animals are able to eat their own weight in food. Ladies and gentlemen, 40 million locusts consume up to 80 metric tons of food per day. Now, what are they eating? All sorts of food, crops, pasture, fodder, browse. If you remember your biology, what do goats eat? They're not eating from the ground like the cows. They're eating from the trees. They're browsers, and that's why they get that name. And so you can imagine just the amount of damage that these animals are able to do. So let me put that number into perspective for you. So we said 40 million locusts are eating up to 80 metric tons of food per day. How much food is that? That amount of food can feed up to 35,000 people. 20 camels or 6 elephants. Now remember what we said, they're eating anything that is green, crops, pasture, fodder, and browse. So this means this is affecting food for humans. It's also affecting food for cattle. And remember, a number of those areas, those 11 counties that we talked about, had been ravaged by, first of all, there was a drought, and then you remember the floods that came in, and then now whatever was trying to grow is being ravaged by these locusts. Also, another thing that is important to remember, this food that they're eating, this crops, the pasture, and the fodder, can have some other serious effects on the environment and the ecosystem. And this is why all green plants, form the basis of the ecosystem. They're what are called the primary producers, right? So if you think about insects and animals and all of that, it could seriously have some potential catastrophic effects on the ecosystem. And that is why the government and the Food Agriculture Organization, FAO, have been working together to try and battle this. But let's understand just what this means for this country and why indeed it is important for us to fight this locust invasion. So, with me, joining me live from Kisumu County is the FAO Assistant Representative Hamisi Williams, who's joining us live now to discuss a little bit about this. Hamisi, thank you for speaking with us here on Citizen TV tonight. The biggest question that everybody's asking is, what now? I mean, why now, rather? What caused this? Where did these come from, you know?
Thank you, Yvonne. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Hamisi.
All right, I think I see you've done quite a bit of research on this. I will add you just one thing, that desert locust belongs to the order called Orthoptera in the nomenclature. So now I'm sure you are well equipped.
Yes, indeed. Hamisi, I was asking, why now? Where did these locusts come from?
Well, it's the question of the weather, actually. And as you have seen, erratic weather, even here in Kenya. This is not even something that is starting yesterday. Sometime between April, May, June, July, August 2018, we got some successive cyclones that went and hit southern part of Arabian Peninsula. There is an area there which we call the empty quarter. It is called this because most of the times this is a very remote area and it's very dry. There is no rain most of the times. So what happened is the successive cyclones that hit the area created a conducive weather condition for copulation of the desert locust, laying eggs, and then the eggs hatched in this place. Once the desert locust eggs actually find some moisture in sandy soil, they will actually copulate, and then the eggs will hatch, and then they will move to an nymphal stage. After which, about 6 weeks, then they will turn into immature adults. That is now from hoppers to immature adults, which are pink in color. Now, this happened and nobody noticed this for quite some time. And so swarms formed here. There were 2 big swarms from this area, which around now March 2019 started moving, and they moved in 2 directions. One went on the west side, which moved into Iran, part of Pakistan, and it is ravaging that area, especially in the southern Iran, even currently. But then the other one moved south, which came to Yemen area. And as you know, with the issues in Yemen, nobody took notice of what happened there. And so these swarms went into the 2nd generation and then found its way moving, aided by wind, across the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, entering Ethiopia and part of it Somalia. This is how we got the swarms here, the first swarm crossing our borders with December. Somalia on 28th of December 2019.
Okay, thank you. At least we understand what caused it and how they then came to this country. So talk to us about the extent of damage. I mean, you know, in the explainer a little earlier, we've talked about how much food these animals can consume. And Hamisi, considering our food security has been, you know, problematic last year with drought and floods, has FAO conducted some sort of interim assessment of the, you know, the level and the extent of the damage so far?
Yes, we got actually the first rapid assessment which FAO commissioned, and the team just came from the field on Wednesday. That is early yesterday. So the report is being compiled. So we're going to get to know actually initial indication of the effect that this has had, especially in the counties that are already affected. But some you could see actually, especially when this goes into the vegetation, the fodder that livestock eat, those are actually directly hit, and you could see that. But we're going to have this report soon, and we'll release it.
Is it likely to be, how bad can it get?
Come again?
How bad can it get, Hamisi?
Well, this is a question. Okay, first, I need to explain something here. This locust actually is dependent so much on the weather. So this is going to depend on the weather condition of the place where they are. When this changes and the wind directions change, we are going to also see a change in the pattern of the desert locusts, the way they are going to move. Like now, the ones that were moving towards the west, maybe the areas of Baringo, we project that when the winds start moving upwards from the south now to the northern parts, maybe these swarms may find themselves going back towards Ethiopia actually, maybe a few crossing to southern Sudan. But this will definitely depend on the weather. So it may not be a very easy thing to say now.
Yeah. All right. My final question to you then is...
Yeah, but if weather were to be good for them, then we'd still be here for quite some time. Because also what we suspect, Yvonne, which I need to say, is that the swarms that crossed into Kenya were actually immature swarms that time. They were pink. But now when you go to the field, you see swarms that are already mature and they have turned yellow. So you suspect that these swarms may have copulated and laid eggs. So what therefore that means is that we could be grappling with eggs now on the ground, especially if they find their conducive environment, and this may hatch and we may be having a second generation.
Okay, Hamisi, just very quickly, what happens next? Kenyans are worried about the cost of food. In 30 seconds, what happens next with control and with also figuring out what happens after the damage has been assessed?
No, I mean, about the control, the government, FAO, and the agencies have very clear mechanisms that are already in place to hit this. Actually, there are already 4 bases that are set up by government plus FAO, which is going to work on that. But after this, we must do what we call assessment so that we can do livelihood recovery, because there will definitely be people that are going to be affected.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Hamisi Williams, who is the Assistant FAO representative. We thank you so much for making time joining us live from Kisumu. FAO, private sector and government doing quite a bit. A lot of work will need to be done, and hopefully the weather and the efforts that are being put in place by the government will help to drive the locusts out of the country or eradicate them completely. We are taking a short break here tonight after concluding our explainer, and we're going into the day's business news. And here's what's coming up.